Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of The Wealth of Health. My name is Ahmed. I'm the Chief Exec of Echelon Health, and with me, as always, is Dr. Paul Jenkins, Medical Director, Consultant Physician, and Endocrinologist.
Hello and welcome.
Today, we're speaking about stress hormones. There's a lot of talk online, YouTube, all the various platforms on what they are, their impact on the body, what happens when there's a disruption within these hormones, and how they can be a trigger for a lot of diseases. So we want to kind of set the record straight a little bit on what really are those hormones, what do they do, what is their function, and what happens to the body when things don't go according to plan. So Paul, what are the stress hormones?
Okay. Well, there are three main stress hormones. Yep. The main one, the one probably most important for life, is cortisol. The other one is adrenaline and noradrenaline. And then the third one, which people don't really won't be too much aware of, is prolactin. Although
Okay.
the function, perhaps you can deal with that one first because that's the easiest to get rid of.
Fair enough.
We're not quite certain what its role is in stress. Yep, prolactin is the lactating hormone, allows the women's the breast to develop the milk glands, produce milk for lactation. But in adults, non-lactating, its level goes up very quickly in response to stress, psychological stress, physical stress, but quite what the function of that is, not certain. Still not certain.
So the levels go up, but it actually doesn't do anything.
We probably has to do something. Because just I don't know whatever the term is, but if something is there for a reason, if it goes up, but quite why in stress, how it modulates it, possibly some people suggest a role in immune modulation, but it's still unclear. But I think prolactin is by far the least of them. The two most important hormones for stress is cortisol and adrenaline, and certainly cortisol is another of these hormones which people bandy a lot of myths and, dare I say it, an awful lot of pseudoscience around.
Right. So maybe we can clear some of this pseudoscience.
That's what we
on
want.
this episode. So what is cortisol?
Well, cortisol is produced by the adrenal glands. Okay, so adrenal glands are two small triangular glands, one above each kidney. The adrenals have three layers, three parts to them: the outer, the middle, and the inner. And they each secrete a specific different type of hormone. So the outer gland of the adrenals secretes a hormone called aldosterone, and that regulates our body's salt and water retention. So it is itself controlled. All hormones are controlled by another hormone. So aldosterone is controlled by one called renin, which in itself is influenced by the kidneys.
Okay.
And the kidneys then sense how much salt and fluid there is perfusing through the kidneys, and if there's not enough, it tells the renin to activate and to make aldosterone from the adrenals, and aldosterone then causes more salt and water to be retained. And so it plays a critical role in long-term blood pressure maintenance, circulating blood volume. So that's the first thing. And if you have diseases of the outer part of the adrenal gland, either both of them, or usually almost always a benign cancer tumor of the outer part of the adrenal making too much aldosterone, a condition called Conn's syndrome, you have high blood pressure, very high blood pressure. So it's one of the rare treatable causes of high blood pressure.
Okay.
The middle part of the adrenal gland makes cortisol, and this is our body's most important hormone, really. There's two hormones really you need to live.
Why is it so?
If your failure to make cortisol can result in catastrophic cardiovascular collapse and death. So it's a high mortality. So you absolutely have to have cortisol, and the body makes more cortisol when you are stressed, when you're physically stressed. And its function is to help with again, some of the control of blood pressure and immune modulation. It's immune suppressing effects.
Why does my body need to produce cortisol that helps regulate?
Well, because you need some beneficial effects of stress, but not too long, the adverse effects of stress. So you want to then have the acute episode benefits of it, and then to modulate it down. So long-term stress is bad, so you need cortisol to try and then modulate that.
And what about the other part of the adrenal gland? What
So,
hormones
okay,
are
well,
secreted there?
we could discuss maybe we'll come back to it, the diseases associated with too little or too much cortisol,
Right.
because those are important ones. But then the inner part of the adrenal gland, the so-called medulla, makes adrenaline and noradrenaline. Or
Okay.
in the US, the states are epinephrine and norepinephrine.
Okay.
And that's responsible in part for our fight or flight response. So if you suddenly a car comes in front of you, you go whoa, and suddenly get that wave of anxiety, heightened tension. Your heart rate goes up. You become hyper acutely aware. But and this is where one of the other myths come in. Adrenaline and noradrenaline also produced by all of the subconscious, what we call the sympathetic nervous system. So you can do without your adrenal glands. You'll still have your fight or flight response produced by because of the same hormones and the cross between hormones and chemical neurotransmitters produced by the nerve endings.
So is it then safe to say that all of these lovely stress hormones, their job is to help the body deal or cope with any stressful situation, but then their function is also to help calm you down or get you down of that heightened stress and then go into normal function?
Yes.
That's really why they are there.
To some extent, yes. I mean, adrenaline and noradrenaline have a very short half-life, almost seconds. So they're produced rapidly. So that's why as soon as, I said
That's
you
the
have that
fight or
stressful thing,
flight.
that's the fight or flight. You're immediately aware. And then if that stimulus is removed, then you calm down very quickly and you resort back to normal. One of the diseases, not diseases, if you are constantly in a fight or flight response for whatever reason, and you get constant adrenaline release, then that's a very, very unpleasant feeling to be chronically, on edge, hyperacute, because it also then is one of the main causes of anxiety. So too much adrenaline, you feel anxious, and you can then quite easily get into this very unpleasant vicious circle where you're producing more adrenaline, you feel more anxious, anxiety itself, that butterflies in the stomach, sweaty heart
Triggers
rate.
more production.
Exactly. So you just get on and on. And so patients who are individuals who are in chronic anxiety, it's unpleasant. Yeah.
Okay, so these are the three main stress hormones and the different levels. And we now understand a little bit of their function.
Yes.
What happens when they cannot perform their function?
As I said, having no adrenal gland, you can't get rid of all of your adrenaline because it comes from all the nerve endings. Yes, so it's produced by nerve endings. So, but having said that, you can easily block its effects because it's an very old-fashioned medicine called a beta blocker. And these were used 50, 60 years ago for treating some heart disease. You can just slow the heart rate down, great for treatment of angina, where your heart narrowing arteries, and if your heart beats too quickly and needs too much oxygen, you get the chest pain. So, and for reducing blood pressure.
So this is what beta blockers do?
Yeah, they block the receptor for adrenaline, noradrenaline.
Okay.
So you can still produce it, but it's not being able to act on its receptor, so you then don't mediate any of the symptoms from it. So they can be fantastic old-fashioned treatment, but effective for anxiety. And we give them quite often, for executives giving speeches, people very stressful situations, social anxiety. If you're going into a room where you're going to have to talk to people, and some people, very few of us enjoy that anyway if you don't know someone, but some people, they get disabling anxiety. So if you, and as I said, you get into that vicious circle. So if you give beta blockers, it can transform their quality of life, enabled to act in that.
Obviously, this is only a prescription kind of drug.
Yes. Yeah, because like anything, if you too much of it can slow the heart too much, drop the blood pressure. So yeah, you may not be responding to the stress, but not if you're flat on the floor unconscious.
You might not be responding at all.
Correct. So as always, you need to get it appropriate. But I think that's the adrenaline, and then some of the, I suppose, an awful lot of pseudoscience out there is about cortisol.
Yes.
The role of cortisol.
Yes. The interwebs are filled with theories and ideas.
Yes.
And as always, I just like to kind of throw a couple of them your way.
Just lob them over.
If you don't like them, you can send them back.
Yes.
So there is, and I think we may have spoken about this in another one of our podcasts, there is the constant the persistence of fight or flight, or living in constant fight or flight, or the consistent dumping of cortisol into the body, and how that leads to A, chronic fatigue, and B, it can trigger autoimmune disorders.
Okay.
So I think we already dismissed the first theory about the chronic fatigue, but what do you think in terms of the relation of the hormones and the triggering of autoimmune disorders?
Can't be excluded. Yes.
Cannot be
No, no.
excluded.
They could potentially play a role. We know that severe stress can play a role in many diseases.
Okay.
Yeah. So how that mediates its effects is uncertain. But severe stress, we know it. Patients with skin conditions, eczema, psoriasis, can certainly worsen those. It's postulated in some other autoimmune conditions, which is your body's immune function being dysregulated as a cause of it. It can exacerbate it. In pure endocrinology world, there's a disease of the thyroid gland, overactive thyroid, called Graves' disease. Thomas Grave, who described it, that can be triggered by severe stress.
Okay.
So we know these things can. The mediation of it, whether it's cortisol, I'm not certain. People don't really know, but there is neuroendoimmunology, neuroendocrine immunology. So there's a link of all of these, and within the brain through mechanisms we still don't absolutely clear. So.
And what happens if the introduction of cortisol into the body, when a certain situation happens, what happens if that breaks down? It is not happening as it should. I.e.,
Well,
we're not producing that hormone at all, or we're overproducing, or we're underproducing.
Okay, no, there's a two very opposite ends of the spectrum, but very both have significant, we call it morbidity, mortality. Yes. So I think we mentioned before, Addison's disease is where the adrenal gland does not make cortisol, sufficient cortisol. So if you are stressed, and usually under severe physical stress, an infection, a wound, your body won't produce sufficient cortisol, and so it stops the recovery from that. And that can lead to cardiovascular collapse, low blood pressure, cardiovascular collapse, and eventual death.
Right.
So before then, it can cause symptoms of weight loss, low blood sugar, muscle weakness, tiredness. So those are the symptoms which can point to it, but they're very common symptoms.
Yes.
But it still always needs to be borne in mind and to measure the cortisol level. And then conversely, I suppose, is the opposite way. Very rarely you can produce too much cortisol.
Right.
And that's a condition which we call Cushing's disease. Harvey Cushing was the person who first described this 120 years ago. And that manifests with too much cortisol, which then makes you put on weight more easily, certainly around the middle. I mean, in medical students, you teach students, it looks a little bit like a lemon on cocktail sticks. So,
Yes.
yeah, but you get wasting of your muscles. So it causes muscle wasting.
Mass.
So the proximal muscles, so your thighs, your arms, become wasted and thin. So that's a cocktail stick, and you put on big weight around the middle.
Oh, wow.
You get a big round face, a moon face, you call it, non-specific, but you get a big, used to call it a buffalo hump. Fat here, but it's not particularly specific to Cushing's.
Okay.
You get thinning of the skin, easy bruising, and then it can cause, it's one of the other rare causes of high blood pressure. So you get very high blood pressure and high sugar, so cause of diabetes. And lastly, side effect is osteoporosis.
Wow.
So again, that's associated with very significant mortality in the long term if that's untreated.
Okay, so if it's produced less or not produced at all, then it could be deadly. If it's overproduced, it could be deadly.
In the longer term, it can be certainly
longer
deadly.
term. What about if it's slightly over or slightly under? Is there any changes that a person would feel?
Well, whether it's implicated, sometimes if you get very mild increases, it can, I suppose, be a cause of high blood pressure.
Yes.
Very rarely, I suppose, diabetes. So you need to, again, evaluate it. It's quite common to have benign tumors, nodules of the adrenal glands.
Okay.
And if you then do careful analysis of them, you can find that they are secreting just a little bit too much cortisol. Yeah. And cortisol is, like many hormones, is secreted in what we call a circadian rhythm over the 24 hours.
Okay.
So the levels are highest just before we wake up. So whatever time we are used to waking up, as our body gets used to it and makes cortisol ready to, the stress of waking up, and then the levels fall during the day and become undetectable at night to allow you to sleep.
Okay.
And if you want, and it's another of the causes of jet lag, or major cause of jet lag. So when you come back from the States where you've got used to it being, early morning, and then you come back to the UK and it's the middle of the night, you're or the other way around. So your cortisol level is low in the morning when you're having to get up.
Yes.
And you just feel absolutely wiped out.
Are there certain vitamins that help regulate that? Because there are theories about, I
Yes.
think it's vitamin K and B6 that help with the regulation of that, or help with, some people say take vitamin B6 if you are jet lagged, and it will help with normalizing things.
Not sure of that. It just takes 5 to 7 days for your body to re-equilibrate to, which is whichever when you go to the States, it takes 5 to 7 days to get used to it, 5 to 7 days when you come back.
Okay. And what about the adrenal gland and the hormones associated with that, and then the no production or overproduction?
Well, those are largely, of the other hormones, no production of aldosterone. Yes, it will affect your blood pressure. So you need artificial hormones. So instead of the aldosterone, which is a natural one, you have one called fludrocortisone, and that helps regulate the blood pressure. So if you don't have that, you get low blood pressure, and especially on standing, when your blood just drains straight to your feet, and you're dizzy and black out. So feel dizzy. So you need that to replace the fludrocortisone. Yes.
So safe to say that these are the basic functions.
Yes. Yep.
This is what happens in the body. That's why they exist. This is what can happen if they start to break down.
Yes.
What we're saying then is a lot of the theories around that are available online or being circulated.
Yes, I think that's polite way.
Yes, might not be quite straightforward, or might not be backed up by scientific correlation.
That's it. I can exclude some of the more outlandish, my mind, outlandish statements.
Outlandish is very relevant. It's very relative now. So
exactly.
Yeah.
Yes, you can't exclude a slight effect. Yes, or an implication in some diseases, but it being, the major cause of no, that I won't go along with.
Okay, I know this is kind of your specialty, and I'm afraid if I say, would you like to add something else to that, Dr. Jenkins? We might be here for another couple of days, but any final thoughts?
I would probably come back to my, it's a bit of my bête noire now, but adrenal fatigue does not exist.
Adrenal fatigue does not exist.
Exactly. Yes.
Well, there you have it, everyone.
But I'm going to now make a supplement to support that. And then I shall start flogging some sort of supplement.
We should call the supplement adrenal fatigue does not exist.
Yeah.
Supplement.
Yes, something like that. Yeah.
On that note, please look out for it coming out to the markets very soon. So that's not going to happen. Thank you very much for watching. If you did enjoy the episode, please like, subscribe, and share. From me, as always, we'll see you on the next one.
Goodbye, and thank you.